Hey guys, so I have now played a decent amount of Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. On Steam, I have, let's just see what it says, 108.4 hours played on the game, which it's not like as it's not as much as some people have, but I think 100 plus hours at this point. I am S rank on all 3 ranks for damage, tank, and technical. 110 star collection, even though star collection doesn't really, it's not like you can't just buy your way up to whatever you want kind of in star level. And then here are the badges that I have, which kind of does also give a good breakdown of how much I've been playing. We have the seasonal badges, we have the player badges here, and then we have, that's pretty much it. I mean, certain like heroes and helpers and stuff like this, but yeah, I feel like I've played the game enough at this point to now be able to give a pretty overarching listing of some points of criticism that I have for the game. Just for some quick background stuff, again, I am S rank on all 3 roles. I do play in Japan, so this is going to be based on my experience in that metagame. Most of you guys probably don't play the game in Japan, probably either in Europe or in the US or in NA, wherever. But I think just because of the way that matchmaking works in this game, the metas across different regions are probably going to be different. And also, I've played almost exclusively in solo queue. So those are just the things I want to just mention before we jump into this. What I'll probably do is I'll probably just put in some like, after I finish recording this sort of like audio section of the video, I'm probably going to put in some background matches or something. I'll probably just go in and record 2 matches real quick and just put that in the video here. Before we jump into the actual like meat of things here, I guess I should probably mention that if you are someone who just isn't receptive to blunt, I don't know if I want to go as far as to say it's going to be harsh criticism or feedback, but it's going to be very direct and to the point, and it's not mostly going to be positive things. If that's not what you want to hear, then this probably isn't going to be the video for you. Most of the things that I'm going to be talking about are aspects of the game that I think just straight up are not good, which, is the entire point of criticizing something in the first place. So just to be clear, I do enjoy the game. I think for the most part the game does accomplish its objectives, but I guess as a blanket statement, I'll just start off by saying I think this game just simply has way too many issues to really meet its full potential. I think whenever you have a new game that launches, and especially a game like this, that's a PvP-based game, it's kind of cross-platform. You can play with people on PC, with PS5, and people on mobile you can play with on the Switch. So that's a really good thing. I think that's a really good thing that they've nailed with this game. And typically when they release new games, you expect a certain amount of issues to pop up and things get fixed over a certain period of time. So I'm not unoptimistic about the future of the game. But as it stands right now, I think there are just too many problems with the game for me to really say this is a great game right now. Right, but that doesn't mean that the game is stuck in this position. Clearly, they can make changes to the game that would help it improve, and I'm hoping that they do that because I really do want this game to succeed, and I like this game. So, just to get that out of the way, I'll mention that before we jump in. So, the way I'm going to do this, I think, is I'll kind of split this into 2 separate talking points. The first talking point is going to be me essentially talking about what I would consider to be just general criticisms of game systems and overall direction that they're taking the game in. And then the second half is going to be more so talking about specific criticism about gameplay mechanics. So we'll just start here. And again, I'll probably have a match or 2 playing in the background as I do this. The biggest problem, I'll start with the biggest issue that I see with the game. The biggest problem that I see with the game is the design philosophy of the game being casual and just like almost on purpose, imbalanced, and I think that's detrimental to the success of the game. They even mentioned, if you go back and rewatch, I think they call it Squadra talk. It's like the very first time that they introduced the game. It was stated in that Squadra talk by the producers of the game that this was a game that was not supposed to be like hyper competitive, but players who are better than other players will have an advantage, which I think is, it sounds good on paper. I think when you have a game that is completely based on PvP, like this game is, right, there is no PvE aspect to this game at all. It's strictly player versus player only. I don't think the design philosophy or the development strategy that you should have going into developing and creating the game should be that this game will not be competitive, because that is completely, it just goes against the natural implementation of players going into the game. But if you're going into a PvP game to play the game to not be competitive, then you're just not really understanding what makes the game what it is, right? And I get it. There are people that, you know, don't really want to be like min-maxing everything at all times and being super competitive, and that's fine. And I think people can play the game in a non-competitive way. But when you go into the game as a development studio, especially a game like this where it's PvP oriented, and you're going in with the mindset that we are not going to be making this competitive, or we're not even at least going to be trying to make this competitive, I think you're already missing the point. And again, I think players can play the game in a non-competitive way. I think eventually, you know, you're going to have different players in different ranks. Again, this game has E rank through S rank being the highest and E rank being the lowest. And of course, if you take a look at like E rank games or D rank or C rank games, players who are in those rankings are probably not going to be playing the game to win at all costs and min-max every possible decision and be super competitive with each other. But as a developer, that should not be your concern. Your concern should be, let's try and balance the game as best as we can, and let's try and make the most interesting interactions between players as we possibly can. And I don't think that's the case right now, because they're going in with kind of this like half-ass mindset, is what I would essentially call it. This half-ass mindset, like they're already making excuses as to why things are the way that they are by saying that this is not going to be a competitive game, right? So I think what their focus should be is try their best to make it a competitive game. And whatever happens after that happens. But don't go in off the bat and be like, yeah, well, you know, this character's really overpowered, or this mechanic isn't very good because, well, we didn't intend it to be competitive in the first place. I think that's actually like a garbage thing to do. So that's like, I think, again, that's the most important thing that I think that they're doing not correct with this game. So we'll see if they take a different stance on this. And the good part about this is it looks like they're already starting to kind of bounce back on that initial design strategy, because they did implement some balance changes in the middle of season 1, which I thought was a really, really good thing that they did. They ended up buffing Boo and they ended up nerfing Super Saiyan Goku. But at the same time, they did something that I really, really didn't like, and I think I got a really bad feeling about this when they decided to do this, and it was not doing anything about EXL Juniors. EXL Juniors, and this is going to be actually like a major point that I'm going to be talking about probably throughout this video, but EXL Juniors, I think, is what is going to prevent this game from being truly great. Now, when I say EXL Juniors, I don't actually mean like specifically the EXL Junior themselves. I mean what the EXL Junior mechanic is like pretty much represents about the game. That EXL Junior mechanic being a divine draw in this game is essentially representative of the design philosophy the developers have of the game not being competitive. Right? So as long as that mechanic exists in the game unchanged, that is representative of the developers having again, I'll just use the same terminology, what I would consider to be a half-assed mindset with regard to competitiveness in this game. I don't think it works. You take a look at every single PvP game that's ever been created. Of course, there's been super majorly casual PvP games. Like you could look at like Mario Party. Mario Party is a PvP game, unless you're playing against CPUs, right? Mario Party, for all intents and purposes, is a PvP game, but it's not obviously super competitive. I don't think this game is supposed to be Mario Party. I mean, unless they actually want it to be Mario Party, which I don't think is the correct choice for a game like this, but you can't go into this game with that mindset of, oh, well, you know, it's not going to be competitive, so that's why this mechanic sucks, or this character isn't good, or this character too good, or whatever it is, right? So that EXL Junior mechanic being in the game is representative of something larger, which is going to be, we need to get mechanics into the game that are just more fun and interactive and reward good strategy and reward good decision making. So that's, I think, a huge issue. Another problem, new character releases just being blatantly overtuned, I think is also almost as equally representative of this flawed philosophy. So you take a look at Super Saiyan, we've only had 2 new characters released since the game came out. We've had Super Saiyan 3 Goku, we've had Super Saiyan Gotenks. Super Saiyan Gotenks is still about considered to be relatively new, he's only a week old at this point. So I don't really think I have like too good of an idea of how good he is. I mean, we kind of know at this point, but with Super Saiyan 3 Goku, we've at least had a lot of time to play with him and fight against him so far. Super Saiyan 3 Goku is ridiculously broken. I mean, there's no way around it. He's ridiculously broken. And I'm pretty sure Gotenks is also ridiculously broken, right? So are we really going to do this thing where every single new character that releases is just like ridiculously broken? Is that what we're gonna do? Is Topo gonna drop in, you know, like 2 weeks or whatever it's gonna be, and is he gonna be also ridiculously broken? I hope not. I hope we end up getting eventually some characters that drop that are just like good, like middle of the road, just like fine characters, but maybe they have certain elements about them that make them better than other characters in certain situations. That's really what I think what we're looking for in a game like this. And then that really can lead into the next point that I have also, which is that monetization is a pretty big issue with the game. New characters not even being possible to be obtained until after their debut season ends is pretty stupid. You know, obviously compared to games like gacha games and other games that charge you tons of money to purchase new you know, DLC and things like that, it's much less expensive on average to obtain new characters in Squadra, but at least in things like gacha games, you have the ability to farm in-game currency to try and summon for the new characters, whereas in this game, you have to purchase them with the Dragon Gems, and even if you have enough Dragon Gems, it's like, you know, how much do you have to be playing for that? And the character isn't even, isn't it a thing where like the character doesn't even go on sale until like the next season starts, something like that? It's really stupid. So essentially what they want you to do is spend like the whatever, it's like $7 to purchase the new character. And I think that kind of feeds into one of the reasons why the new characters are, you know, looking to be all very broken. So I think it's a huge issue as well. Another problem that I've encountered, especially with me being exclusively, like almost exclusively a solo queue player, I don't see why solo queue players should be able to be matched up with pre-made teams and vice versa. The queues should just be completely separate, right? If I'm playing by myself, I don't want to be fighting against a pre-made team. And if I'm in a group with other people I know and I'm in a pre-made team myself, I, on the opposite end of things, don't want to be fighting against players who are solo queuing. It's just not the same game. I don't want to go into a match with, you know, a bazooka and my opponent has like a pocket knife. Like, that's just not fun, right? And then the vice versa is true as well. Like, if I have a pocket knife, I don't want to go into a match fighting somebody who has a bazooka, right? It's duh. It's completely separate experiences, and the only reason I could really think as to why they decided to merge those two queues into one queue is because there's just not enough there's not a big enough player base to support having a split queue between players who are using either a group format or a solo format. That's got to be the only reason why. Otherwise, it actually doesn't make any logical sense as to why they're the same queue. And then the last thing I have, just talking about the general, you know, kind of like game systems, is I don't think the Divine Draw system is really doing what it's supposed to be doing. The Divine Draw system, and this is also going to kind of mix in with the Divine Card system later, which we'll talk about soon, but not even counting just the EXL Juniors, I don't think there's a single Divine Draw that actually makes the game more interesting. To me, they all just make it more annoying. And that's probably personal preference. I'm assuming that there's at least a few people watching this video that really like certain Divine Draws, and that's fine. But for me, I've found literally every single Divine Draw to not really enhance my experience with the game. I think first of all, if they're going to do a system like this, they're going to implement or have a system like this in the game, there needs to legitimately be like 30 to 40 different Divine Draws that actually matter to make it interesting. Right, we need these Divine Draws to actually have like a decent impact on the game, right? Bushes under the Gods of Destruction, clouds everywhere, right? I mean, like, these things just don't really have an impact on the game. I guess they could, like, Hit obviously gains a decent benefit from having more places to hide. You could have characters more easily backdoor if there's bushes under the Gods. Like, yes, there are subtleties to make each Divine Draw slightly impactful, but the Divine Draws, I think, should really have like massive differences on the outcomes of every match, and it should really affect your decisions in how you play the matches. That is why a system like this should be in the game, and I think that's why it's in the game. It's just they haven't really capitalized on how they can really augment the game with those mechanics being in the game. Okay, so that really encompasses, I think, just all of like the general statements I have regarding the game so far in terms of the systems and just general direction of the development team, which I kind of don't like so far. But let's jump into some more specific things that I have more problems with, like sort of like the actual gameplay of the game itself. So what I found, and of course this is my own experience, so you guys might have a different experience than me. I found that the overall importance of kills, so killing enemy players, versus securing objectives is just too imbalanced. Now, obviously, they're called objectives for a reason. You're supposed to want to achieve the objectives. And I think, generally speaking, objectives should be way more valuable than getting kills. But I think, you know, at least, I mean, again, this is me solo queuing and playing in JPQ, and I'm S tier now. I think I've played solitaire in basically every single match, and I found that to be the most successful way to win, way more so than actually interacting with the opponent's team. You know, just kind of like ignoring team fights, even ignoring kills in favor of just solely prioritizing towers and farming experience and securing boss kills. And that, in my experience at least, has resulted in a way higher win rate than, like, you know, more so just focusing completely on just like fighting the opponents and getting kills and killing the enemies. You know, I've seen people saying that certain characters need to be nerfed, and I think adjusting characters in favor of balance is good, obviously. I think the balance adjustment they made during Season 1, buffing Boo and nerfing Super Saiyan Goku, I think that was a really good change. I like that they're doing that, and they're listening to feedback because people are talking about that a lot. I am going to make a very probably controversial claim right here that I don't think I've heard anybody else talk about. I think, again, nerfing and buffing and adjusting individual characters is really good, but I think they should nerf every character. They should just nerf every single character. Blanket nerf the entire game. Okay, that's my take right now. I think character abilities in this game are just simply too powerful. Damage numbers are too high, and I think it makes for much less interesting interactions to really occur, especially during the late game. Right, team fights are just essentially giant AoEs that one-shot entire teams, or you know, like targeted ultimates that solo out individual characters to snipe without much thought going into it. And I think that just isn't really an interactive and an exciting or enjoyable way for the game to play out. I think the game, at late game especially, should reward like strategic team fighting, certain characters initiating with certain skills, and then you have your other skills to back them up. It shouldn't just be, you know, essentially two teams of 4 players bumping into each other, like it's like two trains just like ramming into each other full force. Everyone's pressing their ultimates at the same time. Everyone's just spamming every ability they have up. And that's really what team fights feel like right now, and I just don't think that's really what should be the case here. And that probably, I think, for obvious reasons, is more of an issue in solo queue, because you can't communicate with your team. You can't say, okay, I want you to go in and use this ability, and then you follow up with this. So that probably is more of an issue in solo queue, but I mean, I'm just going to say this. I think solo queue is probably a more important aspect of the game for the developers overall than playing with a team, because I think more people are playing this game solo than playing in a team, and that's just the way these games go. The next issue I have is the tower system. I think the Gekishin burst system is just very, very bad. If you're in the middle of casting a Gekishin burst and the opponent interrupts your cast, you still do damage proportional to the amount of time spent casting the burst, which is called doing chip damage. And I've thought about this for a little bit, and I really do think it's tough. It's hard to really say what the correct change to this would be, since let's just say they simply remove chipping from the game. I think if they did that, matches would just go for so much longer. Eventually you reach a point, I think it's 15.5 minutes. I actually don't remember the exact amount of time it takes, but I think it's like 15.5 minutes. Zeno just comes in and erases everything except the Dragon Ball, and then whoever just picked up the opponent's Dragon Ball first is going to win. I think not having matches go to that point every single time is what they should strive to do, right? So I think it's good that matches don't do that very often. I've only seen it happen like once or twice. But if they did remove chipping, I think matches would probably go on for a much longer period of time, probably reaching that point pretty often, which obviously I don't think is the right way to handle it. But regardless, I still think that this current iteration of Gekishin Burst is just very, very bad. I think it's probably the most frustrating aspect of the game. And this also feeds into the solitaire aspect of the game, since you don't really get punished for simply rushing or backdooring towers the entire match. Again, all I do, essentially, in this game farm experience in my lane, kill the Kai, kill bosses, kill towers. I literally almost do not care at all about my opponent's team at all. I just don't care. If the opponent is also going for the boss, or the opponent is also going for the Kai, or the opponent is defending their tower, that's really the only time I will ever interact with my opponent's team, because I'm just that's the way I'm playing. I mean, that's where I've found the most success in playing this game. It's just literally you just tunnel vision objectives, tunnel vision PvE, tunnel vision solitaire the whole time. That's it. And I think chipping has a lot to do with it, because you could just run in, chip the tower once, run away, wait for your cooldowns to come back up, run in, chip the tower again, and like you just repeat that forever, and you just eventually you're gonna win. And again, I don't claim to have like the correct answer to how they would fix this. I've thought of maybe reducing the amount of chip damage you do by a certain percentage probably is the best way to do it. So instead of you doing chip damage maybe proportional to the amount of cast time you've spent casting the Gekishin burst before you got hit out of it, maybe it's just a hard 10% of how much you would have done regardless, or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. This is definitely, that is a change that would require extensive testing before they would implement it, and I just haven't had the chance to do that. That is a game dev job there. But I'm just telling you that feels like the single most frustrating part of the game, is just the Gekishin burst system is not very fun. The next system we could talk about is the Divine Combo cards. This is really like the only customization option that exists in the game, right? There's no items, and I think this is probably the part of the game that has the most potential actually to expand on the replayability of the game. But it feels very, very underdeveloped. As of right now, there are really two major options for the first two cards. Right? You go Snowball, and then you go like the Barrier card. For most players, for most characters, right? If not every single character, right? Sometimes characters want to pick different ones for the first two, but I would say if you look at the percentages, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm willing to bet that the majority of players who are at least semi-knowledgeable on the game end up picking Snowball and then end up picking Barrier as their first two picks. And so when you have like these very clear best options for those cards, it just really makes the rest of the cards kind of feel obsolete. And it just means the system is not very good, because when you have a system where your replayability factor is not very replayable, then it defeats the point of the system. And then the third card really is like the only kind of interesting pick, because there's not like one clear best one. But so this is essentially just a pretty big balancing issue again with the divine cards. But I think more so than balancing, they should, if it was up to me, what I would do is I would essentially just delete every single divine card from the game and then entirely redesign them from the ground up to make them even more impactful. But there needs to be at least some thought that goes into, you know, kind of determining which cards to choose based on matchup. But I think their overall impact on the game should be much higher, just because it's the only way to really add diversity to matches, since the divine draw system is really, really bad, right? It's really this two-pronged issue: the divine draw system and the divine combo cards. If those systems were like way better and more fleshed out and more impactful, and there was more diversity in those systems, I actually think the game would be like 3 times better. It's those systems that I think are really going to make this game way better once they've gotten into fleshing out how they want those systems to be and giving more like, imagine if we had like 30 different divine draw cards, and then we had actual divine combo cards that could win you games by itself depending on matchup, right? Again, the divine combo cards should be a system where, okay, I'm Super Saiyan Goku and I'm laning against a Piccolo. This divine combo card would make me do more damage, but this divine combo card would let me farm the Kais better. This divine combo card would let me defend better. Maybe I'm laning with someone who needs more defense on the team. Like, there needs to be more of an impact, I think, from the divine combo cards that exist currently. And I think that's a way that they can more well reward good decision making than currently exists, because right now there is no decision making. Right now you kind of just like brain dead pick the same cards every single match. So step one might be just balancing the current divine combo cards that exist and then kind of redesigning things. But I think just maybe just deleting every single divine combo card from the game and then restarting from scratch probably is the better option, because I think the system right now is very bad. And then the last thing to quickly mention here before we end, this is not really that big of an issue, but I'm just going to mention some queue problems. I would say maybe like 50% of my matches don't even make it past the confirmation screen. Right? You have like the confirmation screen. We have to press the space bar to actually get into the match. I would say maybe 60%. 60% of my matches don't even make it past that. At least on the first try, right? And then, the match, when everyone actually gets into the match, I think I would say maybe like 15 to 20% of the time, someone is AFK and the match gets voided. So, again, I don't think this is like a massive issue, but it just results in a pretty big waste of time, and I'm kind of surprised that it happens so often. So, as a resolution to this, I guess we would just need more harsh punishments for people who do this, right? If somebody readies up and then doesn't press, like if somebody queues up and then doesn't press the spacebar to get into the match when their queue pops, let's just say like 5 times in a day or something, or maybe not even that many, like twice in a day you fail to do that, you should have like a stacking cooldown timer on allowing you to even ready up. So let's just say you miss readying up twice. Now you have a minute timer before you can try and queue up again. Let's say you do it again. Now you have a 2-minute timer before you can try queuing up again. You do it again, it becomes 4 minutes. You do it again, it becomes 8 minutes. You do it again, it becomes 16 minutes. So I think something like that would be really good. Just punish players who continuously do this. And then the same thing with people who are AFK during matches. If you are AFK during a match and the match gets voided as a result of that I think should be punished a little bit more harshly, because it ends up wasting more time. So if somebody does this multiple times, probably just ban them. I mean, just ban them. If somebody's going AFK multiple times, like just ban them. I don't get it. Like just end their account. But those are kind of the main things that pop up to me. And this is off the top of my head. I'm not like reading anything like that, but yeah, 100 and almost 10 hours into this game. This has been my experience. Once again, I will just reiterate, I do enjoy the game. I really do want this game to succeed, because I am a Dragon Ball fan. I am a Dragon Ball gaming fan. I think every Dragon Ball game should do well, and I'm hoping that every Dragon Ball game does well. But in order to do that, I think, people need to be voicing their concerns with the games and voicing their opinions on certain points of the game that will change, or that should change, that they think should change. So that's what I've done here. Again, this was mostly just a criticism, a video about my criticisms of the game. Of course, I have a lot of things that I could talk highly about the game. I think the graphics are very, very good. It does feel very Dragon Ball-esque. I think they did a really good job of capturing the essence of Dragon Ball in this game, even though it doesn't really feel like a traditional Dragon Ball game where you're like fighting one-on-one with somebody else. It's not like a Sparking Zero style game or a Budokai type game, or like Xenoverse or whatever. Even though it's not a traditional type of Dragon Ball game, I think they did a really good job of capturing the essence of the series in the game. Again, animations are really good. The characters are all voiced, obviously, so that makes it feel even better. And overall, I think, as a Dragon Ball game, I am hoping that they take some of these points of criticism into their development cycle later. And you guys let me know down below if you agree or disagree with any of the points that I've brought up in this video, and if there's something that you think they should change, or like a certain part of the game that you think they should adjust, or you don't like, maybe let me know in the comments as well, and we can maybe put together something to send over to the developers. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh on them, but I think there's a lot of issues with the game, and I am hopeful that they might address some of these in the future. So I'll see you guys in the next one.